Chair, and board members. My name is Lynn Hoyt. I'm an MNPS parent, and I live in Westmead, Nashville, District 9, and I'm a NOAA member. I'm here to support you and our MNPS educators in your local decisions to adopt the curriculum you feel will serve our diverse students well in MNPS. Whether black or white, Latino or Asian, Native or newcomer, we want our kids to have an education that is equitable and authentic. Educators do need more training and guidance in these tumultuous times. I do not envy you all, but I know that this district has its heart in the right place, and for that I'm grateful. I am concerned. I'm concerned about political outsiders who try to make our kids' classrooms into battlegrounds, hoping to divide us so we don't join together and demand all that our schools need. I'm concerned that a charter school opening in my neighborhood will continue to fragment resources at Westmead Elementary, H.G. Hill Middle, and Gower. And when enrollment drops in zone schools, so does funding, causing budgets to be cut. The first things to go are programs that make families excited about schools, music, art, untested academics, counselors, a variety of sports, perpetuating a cycle of running from under-resourced schools. When schools fail, it's because we fail to resource them, like with programs like personalized learning plans. I want a great school for every child. I want every school to have counselors, social workers, psychologists, and nurses. I worry we will never have these deep resources we need. Thank you all for your time this evening, and please keep pushing to collaborate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Keita Williams. Good evening, Chair and members of the board. Dr. Keita Williams. I'm not a member of or a teacher of education. I'm actually a medical doctor, but I have a passion for what happens in the school system. The House Bill 580 prohibits schools from using supplemental materials that promotes that one race is inherently superior to another. If we are to truly uphold this bill, we need to ensure that it not only applies to supplemental materials, but that the primary materials also adhere to not promoting one race as superior to another. This is particularly true as it pertains to the history curriculum. You see, the history curriculum today is very similar to what it was when I was in school. Both then and now, his story is taught from his perspective. His story teaches very little about the contributions made by people other than him. His story instills him with confidence and hope and makes him feel really good about himself, as his story should. After all, it is his. While I was taught his story and required to memorize the details thereof, my story was only taught in the context of his. If we are only taught his story, then neither he nor I can see much value in people who have scarcely been mentioned in his story. Though not recognized in his story, there are many contributions made by people who are a part of my story. And though he benefits from these inventions and contributions, like the pacemaker, the retinal implant, the light bulb filament, home security system, and many more, the inventors of these inventions are not mentioned in schools because they are not a part of his story. Learning only his story is not inconsequential. It causes him to have a unilateral perspective on life and affects the decisions he makes when interacting with people who are not a part of his story. When all he hears is his story, he begins to believe that his story is the only story that is of any significance. In his story, he is a hero, and he's mighty, and he's valiant, and after all, he should be. It is his story. He seldom highlights the contributions of people who are not like him because it is his story. But what if we were not just taught his story, but the stories of others and their contributions? Shall we call it our story? If history is any indication of future events, he will resist this notion of implementing our story and state that our story will threaten to undo his story. At that point, he will need a gentle reminder that the English pronoun our does not exclude his story, it just includes mine. Thank you for your time.
Good evening, Chair, members of the board. My name is Stephanie Rapp.
I am an MNPS employee, a former teacher, and now I coach other teachers as an SEL coach, supporting teachers to implement social emotional learning practices that prevent and address challenging behavior. I'm also a member of MNEA and am co-chair of the Social Emotional Learning Committee, which is part of NOAA's Education Task Force. Tonight I'm speaking only as a private citizen of Davidson County rather than an employee of the board, and I stand tonight to express my support for 2 MNPS initiatives. I'm very pleased that for the first time our city is investing in social emotional learning by providing funding for an advocacy center in every elementary school. Having a classroom in every elementary school with a teacher trained to support students to learn social skills, use calming strategies to regulate emotions, and solve social conflict appropriately will serve to disrupt the school-to-prison pipeline that has existed across the country for too long. I very much look forward to seeing the impact this will have on elementary students. I'm also eager to see our city's investment in SEL expanded to include middle and high school, where the largest racial disparities in school discipline exist. I also want to express support for the new ELA curriculum because our students will have the opportunity to read a rich variety of authentic children's books written by authors who reflect our students and our nation. I participated in Wit and Wisdom training this spring and was happy to see that it is based on the reading of complex texts and encourages students to explore firsthand accounts of history. I'm aware of those pushing along an effort in nearby counties to ban books that are included in the curriculum which describe concepts of race and racism. I reject these efforts to prevent teachers from being able to teach students to think critically about painful truths that are part of the country's history and which continue to impact life today. It's through learning history and thinking critically about it that we move toward a more equal society, and it's for this reason that I stand in favor of the district's adoption of Wit and Wisdom. Thank you for your time.
Madam Chair, honorable board members, Dr. Battle, my name is Anna Williams. I'm a parent, I'm an aunt, I'm an educator, I'm a native Nashvillian, I'm a lawyer, and one of the privileges of my life was actually to be the student of Kimberly Crenshaw, who actually coined critical race theory, which has been all over the news, including in an adjacent county. For those who fear the teaching of death, who fear the teaching of war, it is not good, but it is among us. We cannot ignore, rather we have to teach. I've done a lot of looking into some of the conversations that have been happening in the legislature and in areas around Nashville. And I would argue that those who fear the teaching of words of protest or injustice or segregation or of inequality or of evil don't understand, first of all, critical race theory. Second of all, they don't understand Public Chapter 493. They don't understand TCA 49-6-1006, which mandates, for example, that we teach Black history. They don't understand that in Davidson County, 68.3% of our over 85,000 students are students of color who have different realities. As a parent, as an aunt, as an educator, as a lawyer, I am interested in our children learning truth. I'm interested in their reading firsthand accounts and learning how to look at those critically. I'm interested in them addressing things with empathy, to learn analytical thinking, to appreciate and understand and respect differences, to look at the world with ingenuity and curiosity, and hopefully with the skills and knowledge they have to gain a better understanding of our past, to gain a better understanding of each other, and to make our future better. As a Nashvillian, I am particularly interested in kids learning the truth of our of our history here in our county, both of the things that have not been pretty and still aren't, and of the names of people who have stepped forward to make them better. I want my child and my nieces to know who Diane Nash is. I want them to know who John Lewis is. I want them to know what happened downtown so that they don't repeat the same mistakes. If we are not willing to speak truthfully about the history of this country, we cannot move forward. That is not critical race theory. That is not anything to be afraid of, nor is that prohibited by statute.
My name is Bethany Riddle Johnson, and I'm a parent of 2 MNPS students, one who has graduated and is thriving. I am also a leader with NOAA, and I am a professor of educational psychology. And in all of these roles, but especially as an MNPS parent, I am here to advocate for an honest education that tells the truth and teaches critical thinking skills. I trust MNPS leaders and teachers to select high-quality curricula. I want my children and all MNPS students to hear firsthand narratives of historical events. For example, when I think about the fact that Ruby Bridges was 6 years old and in first grade when she had to be escorted by federal marshals to school every day to protect her from white mobs screaming vile things at her, if Ruby Bridges had to endure that just to attend first grade, our second graders are ready to learn about her bravery and how even a child can help change the country for the better. My white children don't need to be protected from the harm people who look like us have done and caused. They need to learn from honest history so it is not repeated. Some people are working to try to hide a balanced and accurate accounting of history from our children, but all of our stories are important, and we want them told, not just, as Dr. Keita Williams pointed out, his story. And NOAA is working at the state level to address House Bill 580, to address this movement to deny history. And I'm concerned that some people here tonight are working to be part of that movement to deny the fact that we need to have deep and critical analysis about challenging historical topics and current events. It is crucial that our children get to see people who look like them in our curriculum and textbooks, and most of those children in our district are not white children like my children. It is not acceptable for any children of any race to learn a watered-down version of the truth. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair. My name is Karen Sun, and I teach at East Nashville Middle School, and I live in Vice Chair Elrod's district. I'm here today wondering how you are planning to protect teachers who will continue to teach the truth about race and racism, the truth about U.S. history and U.S. society, despite the law, House Bill 580, that the state legislative body and Governor Lee passed earlier this year in May. The state attempting to legislate away the ugly truth of this country's history and foundation will not change the facts. It will only render a massive disservice to our students and make it difficult for teachers to teach their curriculum. Our students are not too young to talk about race and racism, especially since a lot of our students are certainly not too young to experience it. Yeah, when teachers talk to students about racism and white supremacy, when we talk about the awful things that people have done to others throughout history without redeeming themselves, which is the truth, students are going to feel sad and upset and confused and angry and shameful, but those aren't bad things to feel. It's okay for students to grapple with difficult conversations and emotions. We should give students space to do that and figure out what they can do with those uncomfortable emotions. Our students are our future. How can we ask them to help create a more equitable and just world and society if the state won't let us talk to them about the issues that have existed and still exist? How can we ask them to do better if we can't help them understand the oppressive systems that this country was founded on? Learning the truth of the U.S.'s history is incredibly difficult, but students need to know the mistakes that were made, and more importantly, how people have risen up together to fight back and resist racism and white supremacy so that they can carry these lessons with them into the future. Simply going along with the state's guidelines around teaching or not teaching the realities of race and racism only robs students of the ability to imagine and create a future that's better for everyone. Our families and our students deserve better than that, and our teachers deserve better than that. So again, I'm asking you all what you'll do to protect teachers who will continue to teach the truth, teach the curriculum we've adopted as a district, despite what the state legislative body and what Governor Lee says. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is Amanda Kale, and I'm a teacher and the president of MNEA, which represents nearly 2,000 educators. I know you have heard from so many urgent voices tonight, voices that claim to be advocating for children. The best litmus test I have found for knowing whether or not that's really true is to see if they're fighting for all children, not just their own. They don't require some kids to be written out of the curriculum. They don't require the majority of kids' schools to get less funding so a few can attend special schools. Either you are fighting for 85,000 kids at 167 schools who are majority black and brown and who speak 120 different languages and who have just as much right to walk into an excellent school and see themselves positively reflected in the curriculum, or you're not. The law requires teachers to teach the Tennessee state standards, which includes the Trail of Tears, slavery, the Civil War, the Harlem Renaissance, women's suffrage, Japanese internment camps, the Holocaust, the Civil Rights Movement, white backlash to civil rights, and contemporary issues. The Tennessee Teacher Code of Ethics requires us to, quote, stimulate the spirit of inquiry, the acquisition of knowledge, and understanding. But right now, that's really difficult for us because we have a national movement to whitewash history, codify white supremacy culture, defund schools, attack teachers, sitting right here in this room. And they have the state law on their side. And we know that teachers who are black, brown, Muslim, LGBTQ will be particularly vulnerable to their attacks. As a former history teacher, I have learned that history is not just a list of facts, but a multitude of stories. And the story we are seeing unfold today makes me think of another story. I want to go back to Little Rock, Arkansas in 1958, not 1957. To prevent further desegregation, the governor of Arkansas closed Little Rock's schools. A movement of racist white women called the Mothers League, by this point infamous for screaming obscenities at the Little Rock Nine, urged the Little Rock School Board to purge teachers who had suspected affiliations to the NAACP. 44 teachers lost their job as a result. But before you get too sad, that's not the whole story. The citizens of Little Rock organized together, and they recalled the school board members responsible for the purge and made it clear that the antics of the Mothers League and other racist groups were not representative of the majority of the people of Little Rock. Dr. Battle, school board members, and all the Nashville community who is out there watching tonight, take heart. We can teach the truth, we can protect teachers, and we can make sure everyone feels welcomed and honored at MNPS if we stick together. And MNEA stands ready to help with that fight. Thank you.
My name is Julie Trudell. I'm a Nashville native, an MNPS alum, and I've been teaching in metro schools for the past 5 years. I live and work in District 6 in Fran Bush's district. And I wanted to just talk about why talking about race is important in every classroom. Most of my experience I teach high school Spanish, but most of my experience has been in the middle school classroom where I've taught Spanish, 5th grade science, and social studies. Before we as teachers have ever even had a chance to talk about race, students have already been shaped by their own circumstances and the conversations or lack thereof of race and class in their homes. For example, I had a 10-year-old black student who was worried about his friend being asked to talk to the school's SRO because he had already been exposed to the concept of police brutality. So whether we discuss race, many of our students have already experienced its impact. I believe it's our duty as teachers to make sure our students feel safe and seen in our classrooms, and that cannot happen without the acknowledgement of systems of oppression and the celebration of diverse triumphs. As a science teacher, this meant talking about how important Elijah McCoy was, who patented 57 inventions by 1929, and likely would have had many more patented if he didn't have to have his white employees submit them for him. In Spanish class, this translates to celebrating the diversity of Latinidad, which includes people of African, Asian, and indigenous descent as well as Europeans, while acknowledging the harm done by colonialism and slavery and the ongoing issues of colorism, imperialism, and exploitation of indigenous peoples. Talking about race can also mean exploring the roots of music like bachata, salsa, the tango, and reggaeton, and exploring these genres' African indigenous roots. All of our students deserve opportunities to engage critically with the world around them, as well as see people who look like them add to its beauty. Thank you very much.